Have you ever wondered what really makes the most innovative companies tick? What's their secret sauce? We see the shiny end result, right? The amazing film, the breakthrough product. But what's going on behind the curtain to make that magic happen? Today, we're doing a deep dive into one company that's pretty much synonymous with creativity, Pixar. If you're looking for maybe a shortcut or just some solid insights into fostering real inspiration, well, this is for you. Our mission really is to unpack the principles, the sometimes surprising practices that let Pixar thrive. We're drawing a lot from sources like Creative Cultivation, lessons from Pixar's journey to innovation, and of course, Ed Catmull's big one, Creativity, Inc. We're going to pull out the key nuggets to help you maybe spark some innovation in your own world. So we see the amazing films now, but it all started somewhere, didn't it? Before Pixar was, Pixar began with this single, really ambitious idea. Tell us about Ed Catmull's initial goal.
It really is quite a story. Yeah, I mean, Catmull was just 26, and he set out with this goal. Find a way to use computers for animation, not just as a gimmick, but to make genuinely compelling movie images. It was about art, right from the very beginning, married with technology. But what's really fascinating, I think, is the journey. It was winding, often really tough, definitely not an overnight success story.
Right, not just a straight line.
Not at all. Pixar actually started life inside Lucasfilm. Then it got spun off in '86. That's when Steve Jobs stepped in, put up $5 million, eventually owned about 70% of the stock. But even with Jobs involved, those first few years were, well, a real struggle. Get this. Between 1987 and 91, Jobs actually tried to sell Pixar 3 separate times.
3 times.
Seriously. Yep. There was even a $90 million offer from Microsoft on the table, but Steve, being Steve, wanted $120 million. Microsoft said no, so he walked away.
Wow, turning down $90 million when you're struggling. That takes some serious belief, or maybe nerve. What was the turning point then? What made that gamble pay off?
Incredible nerve, yeah. The big moment, the one everyone knows, was Toy Story. Just 1 week after that movie opened in 1995, Pixar went public with its IPO, and everything changed. That whole journey eventually led to Disney buying Pixar Animation in January 2006 for, wait for it, $7.4 billion.
Billion, with a B.
Exactly. And what that whole arc shows, I think, is that their success wasn't just the tech, cool as it was. It was about selling amazing stories using that tech. It wasn't some simple wish upon a star thing. It really connects to what George Lucas seemed to value, that process of moving towards something, the not quite there yet part, the journey itself.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Failure. Most of us are taught, failure bad, avoid it, be ashamed of it. But what if that's completely wrong? What if failing is actually essential for real success? Even Steve Jobs, right? He had that huge public failure early on that apparently changed things for him.
That's absolutely right. Famously fired from Apple, a move pushed by CEO John Scully, who convinced the board. Jobs then went off and started Next. And that whole experience, that public setback, it seems it genuinely changed Jobs for the better, made him, quote, wiser and kinder. So it really begs the question, how do you create a place where people aren't terrified of failing, especially when the stakes feel so high?
Yeah, how do you do that?
Well, Pixar really got this. They saw that the fear of judgment hinders creativity. It just shuts people down. So they actively promote the idea that failure is an important part of learning. They even say it's a manifestation of learning and exploration. Their view is sort of twofold. There's the failure event itself, and then there's how we react to it. They push this idea and think of the cost of failure as an investment in the future, because if you don't try new stuff, if you don't risk falling flat sometimes, you'll never get anything truly original.
An investment. I like that framing.
Exactly. And the key ingredient to make that work? Trust. Now, fear, you can create that instantly, but trust, that takes time. Leaders have to build it brick by brick. They do that by showing they're trustworthy, especially in how they handle mistakes, other people's, and importantly, their own. Talking openly about their own screw-ups. That creates the safety needed for people to experiment.
That makes sense. But practically speaking, on a huge movie budget, how do they actually budget for failure?
Yeah.
How do you tell the difference between, useful learning and just a disaster?
That's a really sharp question. It gets to their mature understanding of creativity. It's not about just accepting any failure blindly. No. It's about building systems designed for fast failure and quick learning. They invest heavily in things like storyboarding, making rough versions called animatics, constant iteration. So the cost of failure is managed because they try to catch problems really early when fixing them is cheaper, right? And they literally build time for revision for things not working initially into their schedules. So those early failures, maybe a story point that falls flat, They see that as crucial data. It guides them. It's not wasted time. It's finding the path. It's a calculated risk, absolutely, but they know it's essential for innovation.
Okay, calculated risk, fast failure. Got it.
Mhm.
Now, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking the idea is king, right? That lightning bolt moment. But Pixar seems to flip that script. So if it's not just about waiting for brilliant ideas, what does that imply for how they actually build their teams?
Yeah, they really do flip it. Their core belief, and this is pretty profound, is ideas come from people, therefore people are more important than ideas. They have this great line. If you give a good idea to a mediocre team, they will screw it up. If you give a mediocre idea to a brilliant team, they will either fix it or throw it away and come up with something better.
Wow, that's blunt, but it makes sense.
It really does. It means getting the team right is the necessary precursor to getting the ideas right. The real magic for Pixar is how talented people interact with one another.
Hmm.
So the focus is absolutely on the people, their skills, sure, but also their work habits, their values, how they collaborate. That's central.
So what's leadership's job in all that? If the team is brilliant, do they just get out of the way?
Well, yes and no. The leader's role is crucial, but maybe different than you'd think. It's to create a fertile environment, keep it healthy, and watch for the things that undermine it. Basically, protecting the creative process. Good leaders admit what they don't know. That's huge. They trust their people, clear obstacles from their paths, and they're vigilant about anything that injects fear into the system. There's that great quote. Only when we admit what we don't know can we ever hope to learn it.
Hmm.
And this feeds directly into how they hire. The advice is, try to hire people who are smarter than you. Exceptional people innovate and excel, and maybe even braver. Always take a chance on better, even if it seems threatening. Don't let your own ego block bringing in amazing talent.
Okay, people over ideas, hire smarter people. It sounds great, but putting a bunch of brilliant, maybe strong-willed people in a room doesn't automatically lead to harmony, right? How do they get these diverse talents to actually mesh and, build on each other's work instead of clashing?
Right, that's the tricky part. And we can actually see parallels elsewhere. Think about W. Edwards Deming and his work in post-World War II Japan. He initially went over to help with the census in '51, but ended up teaching Japanese engineers and managers his ideas about total quality control, just-in-time manufacturing, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Before that, made in Japan was not a compliment. It meant cheap, shoddy goods. But companies like Toyota really embraced Deming's ideas, which focused heavily on empowering workers on the factory floor to identify problems and suggest improvements. Toyota's whole philosophy became something like, you don't have to ask permission to take responsibility. This focus on empowering people, trusting them, completely changed things. It led to incredible leaps in quality and efficiency, huge market share gains, and this was a full decade before Deming's ideas really gained traction back in the U.S.
So that Japanese example really underlines the power of trusting and empowering the people doing the work.
Exactly. It shows that investing in people, giving them ownership and responsibility isn't just nice, it's what drives innovation and top-tier results. It boils down to building that trust, then letting talented people run with it.
Okay, so empowerment is key. But how do these brilliant, empowered teams actually talk to each other to get to that level of excellence without it just becoming, I don't know, noisy? Pixar uses something specific here, something called candor, which sounds a bit intense.
They can sound intense, yeah. They deliberately choose the word candor, which means forthrightness, frankness over just honesty. Why? Because they believe a lack of candor, if unchecked, ultimately leads to dysfunctional environments. And here's a critical link. Without the critical ingredient that is candor, there can be no trust. And without trust, creative collaboration is not possible. It's foundational.
Okay, so candor enables trust, enables collaboration. How do they make candor happen?
Their main mechanism is something called the Braintrust. Now, this isn't like a formal committee that dictates things. It's a group of really smart, passionate people who deeply understand storytelling. Their job is to watch early cuts of the films and identify problems. They're encouraged to be completely candid, to engage in frank talk, spirited debate, but also importantly, there's laughter and love in the room. It's tough, but it's supportive.
Supportive, but tough.
Exactly. And the Braintrust operates on this core, maybe brutal honesty. Pixar openly admits that early on, all of their movies suck.
Really? They say that?
They do. They see creativity as fundamentally iterative. Ideas, films, they only get great by being challenged, poked, prodded, tested. It's like peer review in academia, but for movies. The absolute key is that everyone needs to see different viewpoints, even the critical ones, as additive, not competitive. It's about building the idea up together, not winning an argument.
That sounds ideal, the additive, not competitive part.
Yeah.
But let's be real. In many places, frank talk just leads to people getting defensive, egos getting bruised. How does Pixar's Braintrust avoid that? How do they keep the feedback constructive when ideas are still fragile?
That really is the art form they've cultivated. A few things make it work. First, the brain trust doesn't give orders. They offer notes, opinions, potential solutions, but there's a crucial rule. The film's director is never obligated to take their advice.
Ah, okay. That shifts the power dynamic.
Completely. It means the director isn't being told what to do. They're receiving expert feedback they can choose how to integrate. The brain trust focuses on diagnosing the problem, not necessarily prescribing the exact fix. That leaves creative ownership with the director. Also, it's deeply embedded in the culture that the feedback is about the work, the film in progress, not the person. Everyone, from the top down, accepts that their early stuff will be rough. It needs this process. It creates a kind of shared vulnerability, actually, which paradoxically builds immense trust over years.
Shared vulnerability, director autonomy. Makes sense. Okay, so they have the right people. They have this culture of candor and trust. But success itself can be a trap, right?
Yeah.
You find something that works, you stick to it, you get complacent. How does Pixar fight that? How do they keep inventing?
That's a huge danger for any successful organization, you're right. As they put it, as companies become successful, approaches are reinforced, and companies become even more resistant to change. That instinct to play it safe creeps in everywhere.
Yeah, the don't fix what isn't broken trap.
Exactly. But that leads to stagnation. Pixar's antidote comes from a quote they love by Alan Kay. The best way to predict the future is to invent it. It's active, it's not waiting to see what happens, it's shaping it. This means leaders need to, quote, hold lightly to goals and firmly to intentions or values. Be willing to adjust the specific goalposts as you learn more while staying true to your core mission. The future isn't a fixed point, it's a direction. And a big part of navigating that direction is embracing experimentation. They see experiments as fact-finding missions. Any result, success or failure, is good because it yields new information. They actually argue that being too risk-averse, too afraid to experiment, is ultimately far more terrifying because that's what stops innovation and leads to becoming irrelevant.
So it's like they have to constantly cultivate this beginner's mindset, even after decades of success. How do they practically keep that fresh perspective alive? What tools do they use?
Precisely. That beginner's mind, the Zen idea of not being constrained by what we already know, is crucial. If you resist it, you're just more prone to repeat yourself than to create something new. Like John Lasseter said, art challenges technology, technology inspires art. It's a cycle. And they believe learning to see freshly is more vital than just raw talent, like learning to draw. It's about shedding those habits that blind you.
Okay, so how do they institutionalize seeing freshly?
They have several really practical tools baked into their process. A big one is postmortems. They don't just do them, they have clear reasons why. 5 reasons. Consolidate learning before it fades, teach others who weren't in the trenches, provide a space for people to vent frustrations constructively, then move on, use the end-of-project timing to force reflection, and importantly, pay it forward by equipping people for future projects.
Paying it forward. I like that.
Yeah, and they mix it up. They suggest changing the format sometimes, maybe doing mid-mortems during a project, or focusing a post-mortem just on one specific aspect. A really simple, effective technique they mention is asking everyone for just 2 lists. 5 things they would do again and 5 things they wouldn't. Forces concrete reflection.
Simple but powerful. What else?
They also use data, but very carefully. They see data as just one way of seeing, and they warn it's dangerous to assume that you always know what it means. Their guideline is basically measure what you can, evaluate what you measure, and appreciate that you cannot measure the vast majority of what you do. Data informs, it doesn't dictate. It serves creativity, it doesn't stifle it.
Okay, so postmortems, for looking back, data is one lens.
Yeah.
But how do they actively generate new ideas that invent the future part?
Right, it's not just retrospective. A really striking example of proactive learning was Pixar's Notes Day back on March 11, 2013. This wasn't just a suggestion box, it was a full day dedicated to internal improvement. Leaders addressed known issues head-on. They set up an electronic suggestion system, got something like 4,000 emails with 1,000 distinct ideas from everyone in the company.
Wow, 1,000 ideas.
Yeah. They then distilled those down into about 120 discussion topics for the day itself. And it wasn't just talk, real changes came out of it. Things like starting a job swapping program, a lunch lottery to get people from different departments talking, and even implementing personal project days.
Personal project days. What's that?
Employees got 2 days every month to work on literally anything they wanted, any personal creative project.
2 days a month just for your own stuff.
Yeah.
That's a serious commitment to fostering individual creativity, and that invent the future spirit right there. Tangible.
It absolutely is. It really shows they believe creativity isn't just a switch you flip. It's an ongoing process you have to nurture actively. You have to make space for the unexpected, for that unmade future. So maybe for you listening, it's worth thinking, what familiar routines or assumptions are you holding on to, maybe without realizing it? What might they be obscuring? How could you consciously try to adopt that beginner's mind today, even in a small way, to make space for something new?
So wrapping this up, we've journeyed through Pixar's world, and it seems pretty clear. Their kind of groundbreaking creativity isn't some fluke. It's not magic. It's meticulously cultivated. It's built on this bedrock of trust, that radical candor we talked about, seeing failure as an investment, and just this relentless focus on people, putting them even before the ideas.
Yeah, their story is a powerful reminder, isn't it? That unleashing creativity requires that we loosen the controls, accept risk, trust our colleagues, work to clear the path for them, and pay attention to anything that creates fear. We're always sort of balancing between what we know and the big unknown. And it's right there, in that uncertain space, that the truly original stuff seems to happen.
The future isn't somewhere we just drift towards. It's a direction we actively choose and navigate, course correcting as we go. Like they said, the future is unmade and we must create it. So here's a thought to take with you this week. Where's one spot in your own work, or maybe even your life, where you could consciously try to invent the future? Maybe by leaning into uncertainty just a bit more, encouraging more candor, or reframing a potential failure as a chance to learn and grow. What new thing could you start bringing into being starting today?